Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I've got a full house tonight. Welcome tonight, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, guys?
We are here to discuss match week 17th of the Premier League, and we'll also preview the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup coming up this midweek. Before we get into it, though, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at House of_Footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Let's get straight into the first match that we're going to discuss. One of the matches that I think a lot of people were looking forward to this weekend. Gio, you and I, of course, having some skin in the game for this one. We're very much looking forward to it, maybe for different reasons, but ultimately, a result I think that surprised us both, especially with the performances from both teams. I could very much argue poor on Liverpool, but a good performance from Manchester United given the circumstances. But ultimately, 0-0 at Anfield. Gio, overall takes from that result?
Um, y- I can I can honestly say better than expected. Honestly, yeah, I thought, like I said in the chat, I felt that they were very disciplined. It takes a lot mentally, being a footballer, being any offensive footballer, having to play a game like that. Wanting to take your chances. Wanting to shift out of position so you can go into the attack. But yeah, I think Ten Hag came out with the right game plan, knowing that if this game spread out anymore, if there was any more space for Liverpool to work around the ball, it would have been a very long 90 minutes for them. So, they took their chances. It's not to say that they didn't take their chances either. When they had their opportunities, they were on it. Pushing the ball out wide on the wings to Garnacho, to Anthony, to try and create those, kind of cut it back in the middle, and see if we can get a shot there. But I thought it was fair. And to Van Dijk's comments about there was only one team out there trying to win. Listen, if your team was any more clinical, maybe you would have won. So don't hate the player, hate the game. You missed your header. Well, you didn't miss your header. Your header got saved by a great effort at that. So, hey man, you shared the points. It's all good. You're not first this week. You'll get it back next week. Don't worry about it. But you didn't have to be so salty about that. But no, I thought it was a very very solid performance. Obviously, it was the game plan and it was executed quite well. Yes, there were quite a bit of Liverpool opportunities, but again, they failed to convert, and in a game where that is the most crucial part, they couldn't convert, and that's ultimately on them.
That exactly right. 34 shots for Liverpool, 8 on target, whereas Man U had 6 shots and 1 on target. And so, with those words, Mac, Liverpool dropped 2 points at home. Feels like a missed opportunity to have continued to be top of the league, like Gio was alluding to, and now, of course, yeah, dropping points to a very much weakened Manchester United side. What are your takes on that result?
To start off, I love the intention. I love the setup from Ten Hag going into this game. It felt like his hand was forced a little bit in terms of how they lined up. Of course, no Bruno Fernandes, no Harry Maguire. So in midfield, to be completely honest, the depth of options that you have, not the greatest. But it put him in a position where he had to play two traditional holding midfielders in Kobe Mainu as well as Sofiane Amrabat, which is probably in alongside both Varane and Johnny Evans, why I think that Manchester United came out with the result that they did. Because between the four of them, they were very compact, they were very tight, and didn't allow any balls to be able to go through, as well as especially Evans and Varane defensively winning the balls in the air, headers, clearances from the box, because we all know that Liverpool are going to try to cut you open with long passes to be able to drive through you. But if you play a low block, which Manchester United did, they're very comfortable lofting the ball in the box, not because they feel that they have necessarily good enough height. It's because they have enough quality on the crosses to be able to kind of manage and create opportunities. But given how well Varane Evans played, as well as Amrabat and Mainu in front of them, put themselves in a position where they weren't get beat too many times between the lines, and any crosses that did come in were easily and swiftly dealt with. So I think that's probably the key position. It'll be interesting to see going forward, how does Manchester United adjust from this? Is this a one-off situation? Because the midfield three with Mainu, Amrabat, and then McTominay in front of them, I think is, if you ask the Manchester United fan going to the season and were to rank a midfield three option, this, in the likelihood that would happen, this is probably one of the last options in all likelihood. We would never have gone into the season foreseeing this type of lineup, considering we're talking about like Casemiro, Fernandes, Eriksen, Mount, all players like that we would have probably seen in front of all of the three players that we're talking about here. But it worked well. So I'll be interested to see how this adjustment carries on going forward. I think offensively, I do want to give credit for Liverpool because they did feel like they were trying. They kept going and going and going. But in that final moment, the final pass, the final header, in some cases, you have to be able to kind of call out when things don't go well. I think we all agree Nunes is a good potential to be a good player. But that, for example, that moment screams out to me where I think he's like 8 yards outside the box. The cross comes in and he tries to head it back across goal. Which, as a striker, you would want him to take the responsibility and at least try to get a target shot on target. But maybe it was a lack of confidence, maybe not understanding his position in that moment like that. In those moments, Liverpool weren't their usual self. And that's where I feel like the difference was. So even though Manchester United did very, very well in their setup and the way that they're able to kind of handle Liverpool's attack, I still feel like they could have made better decisions in those moments where this game, after they were to get that first goal, then you could potentially see it snowballing where Manchester United then further have to go out and can expose themselves, which then further kind of feeds into Liverpool's hand. And since that goal never came, Manchester never really had to come out. So it's really on them in that manner. So great credit to Manchester United, but I think that this shows, and something they talk about later, what Liverpool may struggle against going forward if teams are playing like Manchester United did in this matchup.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight for sure, like you mentioned, the midfield that Manchester United had to eventually put out Mainu, Amrabat, and McTominay. And in any iteration of Liverpool in the last, you would say, and in the Klopp era, I think any midfield three, you should, especially at Anfield, should be beating that midfield three. But huge credit to Man U, and it shows that Liverpool are still a team that is figuring itself out. Those in midfield, especially Szoboszlai and Gravenberch, didn't have the best game, which there were huge hopes for them, especially myself being a Liverpool fan, thinking this would be the opportunity to really go out there and make a name for yourself in a game against a big club like Manchester United. It didn't come to be, and so, like you said as well, Mac, Nunez not necessarily looking as convincing as you'd hope in a game where it was difficult, because I feel like for Liverpool fans, a lot of the narrative before the game was this is an opportunity to put up another big result against Manchester United, and it felt like there was a lot of rushed play, not necessarily because Liverpool are first and want to maintain that, but because you have the opportunity and the expectation is we should be beating this Manchester United side heavily, which didn't happen, of course, and huge credit to Manchester United. So that's what I would say on the negative side for Liverpool. But again, I was very, very, very impressed on the discipline that Manchester United were able to put out, especially in a game that really, off the back of course, not qualifying for the next round in Europe, injuries and players not being there, coming into a hostile environment like this, getting the tie and not getting scored against, especially for Onana, was a huge positive. And the only negative, honestly, the Dallo red card. Do we want to talk about that, Gio? Maybe. Let me hear your thoughts about that. I thought it was harsh, but maybe you guys have different opinions on that. Gio?
Extremely harsh. Extremely harsh. They call it a Northwest Derby, but it is two rival teams going at it. The passion is there. It's the last, minute, 40 seconds of the game. And, based off the replay, it very well looked like it went off a Liverpool player foot. So to that, to be passionate about, that situation is fair. To give him a yellow card, okay. I'll look past it. But for him to not be even facing the referee at this point, and then the referee obviously coming over, and then handing him another yellow because I guess he kind of swung his arm twice at the referee. In that situation, that late in the game, Liverpool having the ball in the Manchester United half, it just doesn't make sense to me as a player, as a fan. Why like why why would you change the outcome of the game based off one's reaction? That isn't even an out of pocket reaction. We've seen much worse. We've seen much less go for a card, but to that, two yellows in the span of 18 seconds was extremely wild.
Okay, and just quickly before we move on from this one, Mac, I know you had some thoughts on that, so let's hear from you as well.
I agree it's harsh. I think that if you look at it just in terms of that moment, in the heat of the battle, that type of situation, I do agree it's harsh. However, I do also think that it was stupid from Diego Dallo, where immediately, because as you can see, he waves his hand in frustration, kind of like throws his fist in the air after the incorrect call. 100% true. Gets the yellow card. But if you do it again, the exact same action that just got you the yellow, you're doing it immediately right afterwards, you're kind of asking for it. So I feel that it's harsh from the referee. I understand his perspective is like, hey, I just yelled at you for doing that, and you're doing it again. What are you doing? But though I do feel that it was harsh, but I do think that it was stupid. So I think it's wrong on both ends. Maybe I'm looking at it a little bit too emotionless and kind of just computer based, logical in a way. But for me, I don't. Why are you putting yourself in the position to harm your team? You just about to see the result, and in these last couple of minutes, why do that? There's no advantage there. The ref's already made the call. You ain't going to change his mind. Now, how mad or you upset you are. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it. I know we don't want to go long on this, but I do want to be able to talk about the Højlund aspect of it, because the one shot Manchester United did have was that great chance from, I think it was a playthrough, which was great, from Højlund to McTominay. Was it Højlund to somebody else, maybe Anthony, then goes to McTominay, and then goes back to Højlund, and he hits it right at Alisson. Decent save, great opportunity. Really the only flash moment is, and I was thinking going into this game, the comparison between the Nunes Højlund split. Maybe this is too much of a big conversation we want to have then right now, but I thought it was very interesting, the comparison between the two strikers. I know, and to split the both of you, being Liverpool and Manchester United fan, I think it might be interesting. What are your thoughts on those players? Compare and contrast. Who would you rather have? Maybe what are your thoughts? To preface it, to give you some guys time to think as well. I like them both. I think they're both going to come good. I think they're both have potential to be phenomenal strikers in the Premier League. I think Højlund right now is kind of dealt like a shit hand in a way, because he has no really good opportunities to be able to make good of what he wants. In terms of shots per 90, for what he has is 2.31, which is the 31st percentile if you go across the top 5 leagues, as well as Europa and Champions League, which is very, very low. So he's not getting a whole lot of shots off. But I don't think that's his fault. I think it's because he isn't getting enough opportunities to get those shots away. He has yet to score in the Premier League. He was like a leading goal scorer in the Champions League thus far. So I feel like eventually it could come good. But I think the opinion on him may sour if he doesn't get enough opportunities to show what he's good at. Versus Nunes, I think because he's going to get churned out so many more opportunities, he's going to have more opportunities to come good. Even though, again, some of those misses that look horrible, he has 4 goals in the Premier League so far this year across 16 games. Not a horrible return, but not the best, obviously. But he's going to be given the opportunities to improve, so we might see a quicker recovery there. So I think that's just interesting, the split between both those strikers that I have really high opinions on for both of them. But yeah, I guess, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Quickly for me, I agree on Højlund. Not a whole lot of opportunities there. A very team in transition, and with the ups and downs, it's unfair to judge him based on how he does. But for Nunez, I think it's how he finishes the season, which will tell us, is he in the trajectory to be the next number 9 for Liverpool, or is it maybe a wrong move by Klopp by the end of the season? Because of course there's a lot of games to come, and we expect him to get a lot more minutes. What about you, Gio? What do you think?
I just think right now there will be frustration. I think there will always be frustration with Darwin Nunez, just because he shows glimpses and periods of which, you say, okay, this is the turnaround point. But, within a snap of a finger, it's not the turnaround point. So I think fans grow frustration there, but I think under the system and it's actually tough because, if Salah were to leave, we don't know yet, obviously. Is there another winger out there that can complement Nunez even more? That can, look for him more as opposed to him look for Salah more. As does he turn on the receiving end? Which kind of goes for Hodgson too. Can he can Manchester United find better service in the midfield for Hodgson? Because right now, sorry, I don't think he's getting that service. I think he's making a lot of great runs, but he's not seeing the ball. So it goes both ways, but I think of experience, I think Darwin Nunez does have the upper hand on him. But that doesn't say much right now because Hodgson is going through sort of a rougher patch in terms of a rebuild, some would say. But as of right now, I would say Darwin Nunez is the better player.
Okay, well, let's move on then to another Manchester club who are missing their number one striker, and that's, of course, Manchester City. They drew 2-2 at home to Crystal Palace, last minute draw, actually. And again, another draw for Pep in the Premier League. And with sort of the stuttering results here and there, it looks like they're falling further and further back from those top positions that they really see themselves in for the season. So, Mac, what were your takes from this game?
The exact meme that we need to take care of right now is the Roy Hodgson laughing, looking at Pep in despair. I think, again, that is the key takeaway from this entire game. It's like it's your great grandfather laughing at you fucking up and doing something wrong, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely perfect. I love it. Love absolutely everything about it. I think this goes to show, though, in some ways, where the never say die, the key moments. Really, Crystal Palace had two chances, converted both of them. In this game, Manchester City kind of did it to themselves, where they did get that 2-0 lead, but they let off the gas. The Premier League is relentless. It's never resting. You always have to be able to make sure you're on it. And Manchester City turned off even for a couple minutes here. It cost them 2 points, pushed them further down the table, and now they're 5 points off Arsenal, who are first. So it's a tough look. Again, I think you kind of pointed out no Haaland, no KDB. For this game. Again, we've been saying that for quite a while. When will they get the reinforcements back? Is it just a stutter? Is it more of a systemic issue that we need to be able to kind of diagnose and fix for the team right now? Again, you want to be able to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's still too early to say because, again, they're just 5 points off of it. They were off more last year, still be able to come back and win the Premier League because it seems like once it hits January, this team goes on a 15-game winning streak, right? And it's hard to really stop unless you build up enough of a bridge above them. But I think there are a little bit worrying concerns for them as of right now. But to kind of switch on to the other side, for Crystal Palace, absolutely phenomenal. I think this was needed. I noted down that they only have 2 points in the last 6 games, so that's a 2 out of 18 potential point road turn. So it's not the greatest run of form for them at the moment. So this was needed. This is at least keep kind of wraps up a little bit of bandage on their Premier League troubles at the moment. I think they're fortunate that there's I don't mean to be rude, but I think it's fair to say some hot dog water teams in this league right now that they don't really have to worry about being part of the relegation battle because they can be bad, but there's teams that are just going to be worse than the week in, week out. And I don't know if we want to have the Saha conversation, but at this point was needed for Crystal Palace. They need to start picking up wins so that they can separate themselves further. Because otherwise, if they keep being as poor as they were this last couple of games, they're going to see them dragged down into the Luton conversation, like the Burnley conversation, Sheffield United and no team wants that right now. No team wants that. Think about it. Everton, I think, are 1 point below Palace, and they got a 10-point reduction. Like it is what they. I think they need to step it up. But this might be a good way to get the ball rolling because, again, 2 shots on target. One was the pen, the other one was the goal. This is kind of as what's the term I'm looking for? Kind of like a scrappy smash and grab as you can get in the Premier League is what you expect. Somewhere Jose Mourinho is smiling proudly.
Yeah, 75% possession for City, Gio. 25%, of course, that means for Crystal Palace. A game that should have been put away. Man City had plenty of chances. The save that one Dean Henderson pulled off on Bernardo Silva in
Yes,
the second half
sir.
shows you the quality of chances that City had, even without Kevin De Bruyne and Haaland. But ultimately, not able to get the win. Fourth, like Max said, 5 points off top from Arsenal. Should we be worried about them based on this result? What are your thoughts, Gio?
Yeah, but worried in the wrong sense. I think you should be worried about who Pep is willing to bring in. Uh, the desperation signing, who knows? But um, obviously letting Calvin Phillips go, I think, it obviously didn't work out. Maybe, he just didn't fit the system. One, or Pep realized he didn't fit the system, after signing him, and finally realizing his ability. It happens a lot. It happens a lot. But fact of the matter is, he's obviously out of the picture now, and Pep's going to be looking to sign a key piece, and whoever, they're looking at, expect other teams to be looking too. But I think they will. They are one of those teams that know that they are in a title race, but for how long? And that's only going to come down to how how much they strengthen their team and how much depth they have because of all the games they're playing, all the extra games they playing, Champions League, all those things. They will be looking to buy, and I think, yeah, we're worried about who they might buy uh, to pair with a healthy KDB and hopefully a healthy Holland, so that we can have you know a great Champions League run and a nice Premier League run as well.
Yeah, it's been reported, I think it was Fabrizio today, confirming that Kevin De Bruyne has returned to training and will join the squad in Saudi Arabia, where they're, of course, participating in the Club World Cup. So bright signs for City. Not sure the sort of the status of Holland at the moment, but you just hope that, of course, with a couple games out of the Premier League, out of England, maybe good for them to sort of get back into the groove, into winning ways with no disrespect to the teams that they'll be facing. Very favorable matchups. Mac, what are your thoughts there?
Great points in terms of the injuries. We'll see what happens and the recruitment that they need to do. I think one thing that's being kind of overlooked in this manner, we've talked a lot about players that they're missing in an offensive sense. I'm a little worried about the other side of the ball. They've only kept one clean sheet across their last 11 games in the Premier League, and they have conceded at least once in 7 consecutive games for the first time since 2019. So this is one of the worst runs of form defensively Pep has had while he's been at Man City. So I think that's another aspect of it, is that are they relenting too much kind of pressure off the top, which is allowing more holes at the back? Are they not as, let's say, effective in possession enough because it gives other teams hope? I think that's something they have to kind of close off, because normally in this game, yeah, they may have won this 2-0 in all likelihood if we talk about a team like within the last couple of years of what we would expect of Manchester City. And I know that they brought in a couple laters, Jakob Guardiola, Kyle Walker's getting a little bit older. John Stones is just coming back from injury again. I think that's another area of concern that they have to look at, where it's not just the injuries maybe up top that are causing the trouble, but maybe there is something wrong structurally defensively, or maybe there is something that other teams are noticing in ways that they can potentially exploit them, because they're conceding quite a few more goals than they would have in previous years.
Yeah, I'm not completely sold on the fact that there's something wrong defensively at the moment. It could just be, bad run of form and just players not performing at their very best. I think Ruben Diaz, definitely one of those players that you can make an argument is not playing up to standard. And Vardiol has been asked to come in straight into the team and make big adjustments. And of course, he's definitely a signing for the future. And so I think you just need some time. And if you put those chances away up front, the pressure is relieved at the back. So we'll see. We'll see what happens from them. But we'll take a quick break here, boys, and then we'll be back covering some more action that is to come for us. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast now, discussing some Carabao Cup action coming up this week. And the first game we're going to cover is Chelsea versus Newcastle. Of course, the big results from this weekend were Chelsea won against Sheffield 2-0 this past weekend, and also Newcastle did beat Fulham 3-0 in the weekend. Actually, quite a impressive result because if you guys listen back to our preview, Gio, we kind of predicted a more even matchup here. But of course, there were some controversial talking points that we can talk about. But based on these results and based on the result between these two teams, Chelsea losing to Newcastle in match week 13 of the Premier League, what are your predictions, Gio, for this upcoming Carabao Cup quarterfinal match?
I think Chelsea have a lot to worry about. Look, they came off a good result, but to that result, one, it was against Sheffield. Two, Sheffield didn't look like they were very up to defend. The second goal was very kind of odd, poor on Sheffield's part because they were trying to figure out who was onside, and it went underneath the keeper and Nicholas Jackson kind of had a tap in. Was that really a great goal? Was that really great team football? I didn't see much of it. They capitalized on a lot of Sheffield mistakes. And when you talk mistakes, and you think of Newcastle, who do we think of? Kieran Trippier, who has been making an abundance of mistakes for the past couple of weeks. But Kieran Trippier is a good player. I don't think he'll continue making those mistakes. And I think on paper, Chelsea may have more names, but I think team-wise, like I stressed last podcast, is that this game against Fulham might be Newcastle's biggest test, or him as a manager's biggest test. Obviously, being outside of the Champions League, and he handled it sensationally. So to that, I think Newcastle are a better team, a better managed team at that. I think Eddie Howe takes this one, and I think Eddie Howe will pretty much take it quite convincingly.
Ooh, okay, interesting. Well, in that matchup this weekend against Fulham, of course, they did beat 10-man Fulham 3-0 at the end, but they did suffer a couple of injuries there, Mac, Famishar, and Joelinton pulling up with injuries. Something you, of course, would not have wanted to see if you're a Newcastle fan after seeing how much they've worked over the last couple of weeks in the Premier League and in the Champions League. But with that being said, they did welcome back a couple of players: Callum Wilson, Dan Burn, Longstaff, and Botman. Do you agree with Gio that it should be Newcastle being favorites for this game? What are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. I definitely think Newcastle should be favorites going into this game. However, I want to poo-poo kind of the Chelsea case, just to kind of downplay them a little bit. If you look at, again, they beat Sheffield, so you think, oh, they're in form. They're playing well at the moment. Let's look back at the course of their Premier League wins thus far this season. Guess who they've beaten? It's the gauntlet of difficult teams, as you would expect. Luton, they beat. They also did beat Fulham 2-0, fair result. They beat Burnley. They beat Tottenham when they were down to 9 men. And they beat Brighton just the other week when Brighton were also... I think they lost a player and Brighton were in an absolute shambles. So have they faced a good team thus far that have been playing well at the moment? No. So do I trust them to beat a team that's playing well and is good at the moment? Probably not. I don't put much faith in that. Very interesting to see. I think there's all to play for it. They're playing at Stamford Bridge. They have a little bit of momentum, a little bit maybe a positive vibe. Have they figured things out? This is potentially be a snowball into greater success for Chelsea. But based off previous results, can we expect a whole lot from them? Absolutely not. So expectations very, very low. We'll see if we get anything out of them. In terms of Newcastle, though, I think you have to give them the credit, but I think with Fabian Schär, Joelinton coming off injured, still managing there, have brought back a couple of players. I think most recently, Dan Burn, Callum Wilson, Longstaff, and Sven Botman all returned from injury and seems to be fit enough to be able to play in this matchup, which I think is key for them, where unfortunately they're still losing some very key players, but they're bringing some back. So if you keep the status quo the same, that still leaves them with roughly around 11 and a half players you actually want to see play a Premier League game, which was good enough to generally beat this Chelsea team. I want to give full credits though. Just a full big shout out to Lewis Miley, 17 years old, scoring his first Premier League goal for Newcastle. I think he's been with the team, with the club since he was 7. So great to see that. And even in the post match interview, it looks like when he was coming out with Bruno Guimaraes, looked like he was coming out with his father because the father was doing most of the talking, and Lewis Miley was just sitting there smiling, very happy that he got his goal. So lovely to see there. Again, I think though, in some ways, and what we've talked about most recently is where Chelsea, if they've come to play and they at least come to play and getting a draw, some sort of result against the Arsenals and Man Cities, where because of the pressure the other team puts on them, they find space to be able to work it backwards and to be able to play well. I think that might be tough against this Newcastle team because they did solve that most recently against them, where they're able to kind of make sure that Chelsea really can't get rolling, that they kind of foul them in their own half, don't let them be able to press the ball. Then if they do get possession, ask Chelsea to be able to break them down, which they're not able to do, and it denies them space. So I really think that Newcastle should be coming into this game very, very confident. But it seems like at the same time, I know I just poo-poo Chelsea a little bit because of the recent result, because of maybe a little momentum, because maybe there is going to be no overturn for this Newcastle squad going into than maybe in the previous weeks with coming in, coming out. They might have a little bit of an edge. They might have a little bit of something. I doubt it. If you ask me to bet, I'm betting on Newcastle, but I don't know. It seems like, just correct me if I'm wrong. Let's say if Chelsea end up winning the Carabao Cup at the end of the season, even though they may finish 10th, just tossing it out there. It's early days. This would be a huge success for Poch. So if you ask me, I think he's putting all of his eggs in the Carabao Cup basket. Like, hey, I've done this with the shite team you've given me. Give me more time. Not dissimilar to the Eric Ten Hag situation, where this cup will give him a little band-aid and give him a little bit more of a time period to be able to work with this team and allow a transition to happen. So I think secretly, Poch finished in the top half of the table, barely scraped through that. Great trophy, phenomenal season, a building block to be able to work on for years to come.
Well, of course, no disrespect to Chelsea, these types of cups are what they're aiming for this season, of course, with the main competitions that they're in, not likely to do anything, I think, close to winning the Premier League. So, yeah, I do agree with that. The little something that they might need could be Christopher Nkunku, who was on the bench for their match against Sheffield, was, of course, an unused sub. So maybe we'll see him and potentially with Newcastle having some players missing out from defense, he could be a player to sort of unlock maybe Chelsea's floodgates to finally start scoring a lot of goals, even though Nicholas Jackson, who we kind of play down, he has 7 Premier League goals this season, which is crazy because at least 4 of those are quite bad, if we can all agree. So, maybe this match is exactly what Chelsea needs. I am excited to see how they do perform because, of course, Newcastle, given though they have been, I think anyone can agree they're sort of the more solid and well-balanced team at the moment. Chelsea, especially with Newcastle missing Joe Linton, they'll miss one of those rough bodies in the midfield. And so if you do have a good game from Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, and Conor Gallagher, you could overrun that midfield who will be missing a big player and a big body of Joe Linton, even though Bruno Guimaraes was very, very impressive in their game this weekend for Newcastle. I think it might just be too many games for him to sort of follow that up on. So, hey, maybe it's a little closer than we expect. I'm just hoping for a good spectacle because I think it's not unfair to say, Gio, winner of this game will probably see themselves 1 foot in the final. The other matchups are, of course, Everton Fulham and Port Vale and Middlesbrough. And we're, of course, going to preview the Liverpool West Ham. So I think technically winners from Chelsea, Newcastle, and Liverpool West Ham should, unless they face each other next, should see themselves as 1 foot in the final. Let's then preview, if you guys want, the next matchup, which is going to be Liverpool versus West Ham. Liverpool, of course, we just talked about them, tied 0-0 in the weekend against Manchester United, but West Ham got an impressive 3-0 win against Wolves this past weekend. So, Mac, why don't you hit it off with what you expect to happen in this game?
I think this game could be absolutely fascinating. To preface it, I think to start off, we look back at this first matchup between these two teams. Liverpool won 3-1 to West Ham in match week 6. That's quite a while ago. But there are two major differences that were, in my opinion, between this game and that game. And what we'll end up be seeing. One, his name is Mohamed Kudus. Ray, I think, and Gio both have eloquently talked about his impact at West Ham, which I want to talk about in a minute. As well as on the Liverpool side, is Tsimikas instead of Andy Robertson in the starting lineup, because those two players are going to be in direct opposition to each other. And as we saw what happened in the most recent matchup for West Ham against Wolves, as well as Manchester United facing Liverpool, West Ham, let's take a step back. Manchester United took a page out of West Ham's book in how they played against Liverpool. We know in all likelihood that's what our West Ham are going to do, near identical. Instead of being maybe a back four with another with 5 across the midfield, it's probably going to be a back 5 with 4 across the midfield. And on the far right hand side is going to be Mohamed Kudus, and Paquetá is going to be in the middle, looking to be able to play long ball to Mohamed Kudus, any opportunity, going against Tsimikas, who is nowhere near the level of defender who Andy Robertson is, has the engine, has the pace to be able to keep up a player like that. So I think that's a clear path out where a lot of teams, when they're facing Liverpool, have been targeting the right side when Trent vacates that midfield, that right back position. But with Kudus on the right-hand side, potentially Paquetá playing the ball to him, even Jarrod Bowen maybe on the other side as well, there are key outlets, I feel like, where West Ham can get at certain aspects of Liverpool's defense that they weren't able to in the first matchup. I think, though, in terms of Liverpool, what they'll need to be able to figure out against that low block, okay, it didn't work well against Manchester United. What went wrong? They really had even though it's a Premier League game, a trial run of team that they're going to face the exact same way in the next week. How can we be able to make sure that we're effectively creating opportunities? How else we can potentially break the lines to be able to score, kind of create A1 goal scoring opportunities? I'll be interested to see what adjustments make. I think a big player, someone who we talked about a little bit earlier, that has to have a big game, who did have a big game when the first two teams matched up and scored in the game, is Darwin Núñez, of course, where he's the one after in the first half, it was 1-1. Mohamed Salah got the goal early, Jarrod Bowen responded, and in the 60th minute, he was the separator, which led West Ham to have come further out deeper into the game, which allowed for Liverpool to end up scoring their third goal. So I think him having a big game, being a threat in the box, being I would argue, the best outlet Liverpool have for their crosses that go in. If he's able to time his runs correctly, if he's able to put himself in a position where he's able to finish easily and get on the score sheet early, it's going to create a lot of pressure for this West Ham, where they're not going to be able to stick to the game plan for as long as they want to. So overall, I think this is a very interesting game. I think either team can win. The last part to be able to talk about the separator, and I think at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Liverpool because it's at Anfield. They rarely, if ever, lose at Anfield, let alone tie a game. So I would feel very, very confident. But if there's a way out, as we just saw, it can happen again. So Liverpool have to learn from their mistakes. And I think West Ham, they know that they can play to their strengths. And they can be ready to be able to perform just like they need to at least set up a replay, if not potentially take a win.
Okay, well, exact same question, Gio. Quick turnaround for Liverpool in a game where they failed to score at home. Could this be another potential, especially against this West Ham team that Mac just bigged up on the defensive ability? Could this be a potential game where you could see them struggling to score again? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely, because West Ham are going to play exactly like Manchester United did. And sorry, the major difference is West Ham can actually score. Player like Kudus, obviously not Anthony, fantastic for West Ham fans, can actually score. So you pair that with an amazing dead ball specialist, Jarrod Bowen. We know what he's capable of doing. And then as a backup option, you have a player that can hold up play in Mikel Antonio. So those long balls off, those dumps when you're sitting in a low block, he's able to hold up play for players like Kudus, for players like Jarrod Bowen who want to make that overlapping run and just lay off the ball to them. That's also a possibility. And the thing is, yes, either team can win, but I think the longer this game stays a draw, the higher the chance West Ham wins. And I don't know if it's a hot take. I don't think it's a hot take because the longer it stays a draw, the higher Trent Alexander-Arnold will want to push up that pitch. The higher he pushes up that pitch, the colder he leaves Konate, and I don't think the Konate is as agile as we perceive him as, and Jared Bowen and other players around will look to exploit that. So the longer this game goes on, the more of a chance West Ham has to win.
Yeah, I feel completely right. Of course, Ibrahim Konate also coming back from injury himself recently, so I don't think he's up to 100% physically. So, of course, we saw the possibility, especially that one play that Man U had their first shot on target from. Quick play down the side, quick knockdown, and then in transition, being able to play it around a Liverpool team who were quite, had the numbers back. But if you have players like Paqueta and Kudus and a smart run between them, from Bowen, honestly, that's I think the key to unpicking this Liverpool defense, who again haven't been as convincing in the Premier League or in the season so far, leaking goals here and there. So that's going to be something that's going to be interesting to see. I do think though Liverpool can score, and so I do expect this game to be a who can who can get the final blow, because I think Liverpool will score, and I think at the same time West Ham will score as well. It's kind of like Man City against Crystal Palace. Do you score early enough and then sit back, and if you're West Ham, for example, you score early enough and then sit back and absorb pressure? I don't think that's necessarily the best way, especially at Anfield. Maybe you try to hit them in the second half, and in a smash and grab style where Liverpool have no option but to throw numbers forward, very much like they did against Manchester United, where they took off a couple of midfielder players and put on some forwards to make it essentially one or two players in midfield, and then just bypass the midfield, which, if that's the case, West Ham, I think, will be very confident in their counterattack. So that will be very interesting to see from my point of view. But honestly, a great spectacle to come, which leads me to, I guess, before we wrap up the podcast, guys, out of the 8 teams that are in the Carabao Cup quarterfinals, Everton, Fulham, Port Vale, Middlesbrough, Chelsea, Newcastle, Liverpool, West Ham. What are your predictions, guys? Who do you have to win the competition? Is it too early to say, or do you guys have a team in mind? Of course, myself, I'm a Liverpool fan. I think Liverpool at home against West Ham, winning that game, will have us, like I said, a foot in the finals, because I am confident that Liverpool will be able to beat anyone from that comes out of the Everton, Fulham, and Port Vale Middlesbrough game. But what do you guys think? Could there be another unlikely winner or likely winner that comes out of this? I'll toss it to you first, Gio.
I think if West Ham win this game, I do think West Ham would be the favorite. Just sheer capability of offense. We've seen Newcastle struggle, and we've seen once they do struggle, they do kind of overcompensate in fouling and they kind of lose their heads a little. We've seen it from Bruno Gomes, we see it from Joe Linton all the time. But that's only if Liverpool loses, which again at Anfield is very tough. So yeah, I would have to strongly agree with you. I think Liverpool are the favorite. I think they will look again, because the Prem is still a toss up. The Europa League, I think they're still gunning for as many trophies as they possibly can. And again, I've stressed this long ago, is that they're flying under the radar. And look, now they have 3 chances and 3 opportunities to snag titles. So, if they can win all 3, it'll be probably one of the best seasons that they've had in a while. So, more credits to them. And yeah, no, I genuinely think they can win it all.
I think that's a great shout, with Devin Moyes, of course, winning the Europa Conference League with Aston Villa last season, a manager who is well versed in cup runs. So that's could be a team, if of course they beat Liverpool this Wednesday, to make it all the way through. But lastly, of course, but certainly not least, Matt, give us your thoughts on who could win this competition.
I think Liverpool are the favorites. I think they're one with a bullet. Just because, again, they're very comfortable. They know who they are in terms of the best manager, in terms of the best individual players. Liverpool have them. Who I actually want to win? I would want to see Newcastle win. I think after last year losing the Carabao Cup final, I think it might nice to be able to have that kind of that story go full circle where they'll be able to come back and win the competition to get the first trophy under David Moyes, as well as hopefully propel them into a position where they can fight to be in Champions League contention, because it might be tough for them to finish in that, even though they kind of may have messed up their own coefficient by finishing last in the group, where fifth place may not be eligible, so it's even harder. But at least if they finish close to the top four, in the top four, and they have this trophy, it keeps kind of the good feelings going at Newcastle and potentially still sees them further evolve and elevate themselves as a club to be able to continue to widen the breadth, the depth at the top of the Premier League. So that's who I would want to see win. But who would win? The best team is Liverpool, so I would take the best team.
Okay, well, you heard it here from us, guys. Everyone thinks Liverpool's the best team. I'm joking. But this concludes our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Friday, when we give you gifts to the fans and teams across the Premier League. So we'll bring up a new special episode for you guys. But until then, thank you, Matt, for joining us tonight.
Gunners, top of the table. Let's go.
Thank you, Gio.
Virgil, let it go, buddy. You'll sleep better at night.
Have a good night, guys.